And I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching. Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's 6 o'clock and I am Michelle Dewberry. The massive news today, the serial killer Lucy Letby will never be outside of prison again. She got a whole life order. Good, but this throws so many questions up, doesn't it? I'm saying it is time now to restart the conversation about the death penalty in this country. Do you agree with me? Would she have been a candidate for it if it indeed was in place? Also as well, what about the goings-on at the hospital trust? So many people now will come under fire for their failings and also as well, actually we're just going to get right deep into the thick of that topic. Also as well, on other matters, the Lionesses didn't win at the weekend, but get this now, they're facing criticism because they're all too white. What is going on? And also Sadiq Khan's office under fire for the similar kind of thing, suggesting a white family doesn't represent London. Let me ask you this, why is it okay to be racist towards essentially white people? Because you would not get away with saying those comments about anybody else, but white people, don't worry about them, they are fair game. What is going on? Also as well, I want to talk about NATO. There's talk now of us sending jets to Ukraine. What do you think? Should Britain be backing this or not? Have we done enough? At what point do we say, OK, it's not our war? Will there ever be a point, or are we in it now until the bitter end, whatever that might look like? Plus, Nigel Farage, as you know, follows me at 7 o'clock, but he's a little bit like Kevin McAllister. He seems to be lost in New York right now. I'll be following his progress and seeing what's going on. But before we get into all of that, let's get up to speed with tonight's latest headlines.
Good evening. This is the latest from the GB newsroom. The parents of two triplet boys murdered by Lucy Letby on successive days have said the nurses destroyed their lives. The judge ordered that she be sent a transcript of his sentencing remarks and copies of the statements read aloud by families of her victims. It comes after the most prolific child serial killer in modern British history was given a whole life term but refused to appear in court. The 33-year-old was found guilty of murdering 7 babies and attempting to murder 6 more at the Countess of Chester Hospital between 2015 and 2016. Handing down the sentence, Mr Justice Goss said there was premeditation, calculation and cunning in her actions.
You acted in a way that was completely contrary to the normal human instincts of nurturing and caring for babies, and in gross breach of the trust that all citizens place in those who work in the medical and caring professions.
While the mother of 9-year-old Olivia Pratt-Corbell, who was fatally shot inside her home in August last year, says her heart goes out to the families of Lucy Letby's victims after she didn't appear in court for the sentencing.
The impact statement was really hard. It didn't take minutes. It was days, over a matter of weeks. That first port of call of rehabilitation should be in that courtroom and standing there listening to the judge and listening to the family's impact statements.
While those statements from parents were heard by the court this morning, the mother of one baby murdered by Lucy Letby says her experience in hospital was like something out of a horror story. Another said she was haunted by vivid images and that Letby had destroyed her life after 2 of her triplets were killed. And a further mother of 2 of Letby's victims, one of whom survived, called her absence from court today a final act of wickedness from a coward. Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer says the government must change the law to force criminals to hear their sentencing.
We need to change the law. I hope the government will do it because I think it can be done very quickly. If they don't, we will force an amendment to appropriate legislation. But actually, my position is to invite the government to get on with it, to offer Labour support, so this could go through very, very quickly. This isn't the first case. The government has been dragging its heels on this. Get on with it for the sake of these victims and, of course, the other cases that went before it.
The government's facing criticism for ordering a non-statutory inquiry, with some saying it lacks teeth. But the Prime Minister says it's important families get answers quickly.
Well, I think the important thing for the inquiry to do is make sure that families get the answers that they need, that it is possible for us to learn the lessons from what happened, everything conducted transparently and to happen as quickly as possible. Those are the objectives that we want for the inquiry, and we'll make sure that it's set up to deliver on those aims.
In other news, 750 migrants have crossed the English Channel so far today as the Border Force begins a week of so-called red days. The force's system's predicting high numbers of arrivals with close to ideal conditions forecast. GB News can reveal that 15 small boats made it to UK waters earlier today. Maritime sources have confirmed that one boat carrying around 50 migrants made it to the Sussex coast in Rye. Manchester United and Mason Greenwood have mutually agreed for the player to leave Old Trafford. The forward had been suspended since January last year after being charged with attempted rape and assault. The case was discontinued by the Crown Prosecution Service 6.5 months ago. In a statement, the 21-year-old said he accepts he made mistakes in his relationship and he takes his share of responsibility. From today, Londoners are eligible for a cash grant of up to £2,000 for cars that don't comply with ULEZ policies. The Mayor of London's scrappage scheme will cost around £110 million. It begins today ahead of the expanded ultra-low emission zone, which will cover all London boroughs from the 29th of August. This is GB News across the UK on TV, in your car on digital radio and on your smart speaker by saying Play GB News. Now it's back to Michelle.
Thanks for that, Tatiana. Well, I'm Michelle Dewberry with you till 7 o'clock tonight, alongside me, the columnist for the Mail on Sunday, Peter Hitchens, and the PR consultant, Alex Dean. Good evening, gents. I say confidently, by the way, with me until 7, but you'll be aware that at 7, Nigel Farage takes the hot seat over from me. But in a little bit like Kevin McAllister style, I'm showing my age there, my favourite film, Home Alone, he's currently lost in New York. I think, well, I hope that he's just about got off a plane there. He should be, I hope, imminently going through passport control, but goodness only knows what may happen between then and now. So you guys, you might actually be here. I don't know. We'll just we'll wing
tap dance, we'll entertain.
Tap dance.
Costume.
You can tap dance if
I was
you like.
just about to say I would pay good money to see you tap dancing,
How much?
Peter Hitchens. We can discuss that in one of the commercial breaks. We can negotiate. Anyway, I shall keep you updated with that. But in the meantime, you know the drill, don't you? Get in touch with me, gbviews at gbnews.com, or you can tweet me at gbnews. Now, the biggest story of the day, of course, Lucy Letby. She has been sentenced to a whole life order. Of course, now we know, familiar with the details of this story, is the murder of 7 babies and the attempted murder of 6. I mean, obviously, there's only so far you can say just how evil this woman is, but I will cross live to our North West of England reporter, Sophie Reaper. Sophie, good evening to you. Please, can you just bring us up to speed? You're outside of Manchester Crown Court as we speak. Just bring my viewers up to speed with the latest goings-on of the day.
Well, good evening to you. It's been an incredibly emotional day here today at Manchester Crown Court. This morning, we heard those victim impact statements from the families of Lucy Letby's victims. Some incredibly harrowing lines from those victim impact statements. Things like the parents of child A and child B, one of whom was murdered, one of whom Lucy Letby attempted to murder. They said, "We hope you have a very long life and spend every every day suffering for what you've done. You are nothing. We also notably heard from the father of child O and child P, the two boys in a set of triplets who were both murdered. He spoke about hitting rock bottom and considering taking his own life. He said, Lucy Letby has destroyed our lives. The anger and hatred I have for her will never go away. It has destroyed me as a man and as a father. Now, listening to that in the courtroom was truly, truly very difficult for me and for my colleagues at other news outlets. It's been a really hard thing to sit and listen along to. Then in the afternoon, we heard from Justice Goss as he began his sentencing of the defendant. Of course, she didn't appear in the dock. We knew that she wouldn't, or we suspected that she wouldn't anyway, given her lack of appearances the past few times court has sat. And we were right. We didn't see Lucy Letby today. She refused to appear and face up to the crimes that she had committed. In that sentencing, Justice Goss said there were premeditation, calculation and cunning in your actions. You have no remorse and there are no mitigating factors. And as a result, he did indeed, as we suspected, pass the whole life order, which means that Lucy Letby, who is now in modern British history the worst serial killer of children, she will now spend the rest of her life in prison.
Sophie Reaper, thank you very much for bringing us up to speed with that. Now, this whole case is absolutely disgraceful, deeply disturbing, and like many of you, I imagine I was listening as well along to proceedings today, and it was, as Sophie was just saying, absolutely devastating to hear the impact statements read out by those families. Absolutely heartbreaking. Now, there is so much to unpick and unpack from this story, so I've got a few questions for you guys on my panel tonight. I'm wondering, do you think we need to reopen the conversation about the death penalty when it comes to cases like this? Of course, Sophie was just mentioning there that Lucy wasn't even, well, she was at court, but she wasn't in the dock. She didn't sit there and hear the judge. Those impact statements, we were just saying she didn't want to, she didn't have to. And also, as well, I want to get to the whole situation around the NHS. You know, when you look at the failings there, they are mind-blowing, and I suspect there will be more information coming out over the coming days and weeks. So I'm asking, how do you deal with this then? What do we do? Criminal proceedings, is that the answer? We're seeing a suspension apparently already today. So I want to get into all of those aspects with you. And I've got a key question for you, because emotionally, you'll be shouting at your telly saying, yes, Michelle, of course, Lucy Letby should have been forced to sit in that dock. My question, we will all agree perhaps, but how do you do that then? If you've got a criminal that's going to disrupt proceedings, that's going to be deeply inhumane towards the victims' families, how are you going to make sure that that all runs smoothly? So don't just get in touch with me saying, yes, you want to force people. I want your plans as to how you would make that happen. Let me just pick up on this death penalty point first of all, though, with you, Alex. Do you think, because we read cases like this, people now start saying time for the death penalty conversation, would you be in favour of either the conversation, maybe perhaps a referendum, and then an outcome, perhaps of a return to capital punishment?
No, I wouldn't. And the case can be as bad as this, which is as bad as it gets, and I'm still not in favour of a return to the death penalty. Really? Yeah. I don't think the state should kill people. OK, we'll come back and we'll unpick that in a second. But Peter, your thoughts?
Oh, I've been arguing for the death penalty for decades. I have seen in my life 2 executions, and it has altered my view that the death penalty is a vital weapon in the hands of the justice system to protect the innocent against the evil and the violent. Having made that point absolutely clear, that it's something I would consider, I think we have to be extremely careful about it under current circumstances. At the moment, we're all talking about Lucy Letby. But 2 weeks ago, we were talking about Andrew Malkinson, a man who was convicted by a jury under the same justice system as convicted Lucy Letby of a horrible crime of rape, and who was treated after his conviction with similar. I've looked it up. In fact, the reporter from the Manchester Evening News who covered the trial has written a fascinating article about how it was when the jury verdict was first reached, and the whole attitude everybody had towards Mr. Malkinson at the time, dismissing him as a violent and unforgivable rapist. Now we know that justice system completely failed.
But we know that because of DNA. We know that the DNA actually proved that ultimately
yes, but you would have executed
innocent.
him by the time that DNA had come to light.
I wouldn't have personally had him as a candidate for it.
The state would have executed him had we had the death penalty for that sort of offence well before such exonerating evidence came to light. I did a criminal cases, a criminal...
Because you're a barrister, I just want to make that clear as well for people that might not be familiar with that.
I did a criminal case review commission case of a serious sexual assault. It wasn't rape. My client had spent some years in prison and exonerating evidence emerged later. He was desperate to have his name cleared. He was already, unlike Malkinson, he was already out of prison. He was desperate to have his name cleared. From time to time, such things do happen. But there are great injustices. There's very little you can do to restore to somebody the life that they have lost, but you certainly can't do it if you've killed them.
It's not just that, though. I think my impression is that both the police and the prosecution service and the justice system in this country are deteriorating quite fast. They simply are not of the standard which I would feel able to trust with a decision like sentencing somebody to death. They say, I'm very much in favour of it, but people will always turn around and say, well, but you can't do it, what if there was a mistake? And I would say, actually, if you take serious precautions, and if you run your justice system properly, the chances of a mistake are very small. And in any case, in many other ways, and Alex says the state shouldn't kill, the state kills all the time. The state kills when it employs and deploys an army, an air force, and a navy. The state kills when it licenses the current transport system which we have, which guarantees each year to kill hundreds of totally innocent people needlessly.
Come on.
And the other thing is that every 2 or 3, I think, 2 convicted murderers who have been released from prison kill again every 3 years in this country. Now, they are deaths of innocent people. They are the result of a policy, a generally humane policy of releasing some people early. It's simply not possible to devise a policy in which every conceivable chance of an innocent person being killed is eliminated, and it would be hypocritical of us to pretend that's what our concern was. In this case, though, I think the Malkinson case shows that both in the police and in the prosecution service and in the appeal system, there is a very, very serious set of flaws which would make it extremely difficult for us to support the death penalty against anybody at the moment.
When the state kills people in the course of armed combat, fighting aggressors or the king's enemies abroad, it does so because we are defending our nation in the course of mortal combat. It's very different to, in cold blood, calculatedly taking a life in the justice system. And equally, to compare it to our transport system is, no offence, facile, because it's not the intent of the transport system for a moment to execute somebody, whereas plainly if you put a noose around their neck or inject lethal toxins into their vein, it is.
Let me answer those 2 points. First of all, quite a lot of killing in wars is pretty cold-blooded, especially when we dropped bombs on Serbia a few years ago and killed the make-up lady at Serbian TV in Belgrade. That was pretty cold-blooded, and it was very much approved of by liberal-minded persons in this country. The other thing is that we maintain armed services to kill as a deterrent to protect ourselves from external attack. We maintained, when we did, the death penalty to defend ourselves against internal attack from people who weren't prepared to respect human life.
If one concedes...
And on the issue of road deaths, we know it is statistical certainty that the transport policy which this country has agreed on will kill hundreds of innocent people.
But it's not its intention.
There is absolutely no way in which that cannot
it's absurd.
I didn't interrupt you. There is no way in which that cannot be described as intentional. We know it's going to happen, and yet we still do it.
Right, I don't quite know how I've got onto road traffic accidents.
Neither do I.
Well, because it's relevant.
Let me ask you a question.
No, it isn't.
Let me ask you a question, because I am in favour of the death penalty for the most hideous of crimes. I wouldn't have, the Malkinson case, I wouldn't have had him as a potential candidate for it, but If someone is in favour of the death penalty, i.e. you've just said you are, what would be the reason? Is it for punishment? Is it to deter future crimes? Is it to save money of incarceration? What's the driver?
The fundamental driver is deterrence. There is, if you happen to take a Christian position, there is an argument that it is a preferable way of dealing with heinous crime than locking people up for the rest of their lives.
Deterrent, is that fair?
I'm not generally addressing Christian audiences, so I won't go into that, but I do have a Christian reason for supporting it. But no, the simple practical reason is the deterrence, particularly of armed crime. And of the carrying of weapons, guns and knives by criminals. There's evidence from the suspensions of the death penalty in this country before it was abolished, which suggests very strongly that it's effective in that way. It changes the behaviour of criminals, and that is the biggest argument in its favour.
Yes.
Final word to you on this.
It may deter career criminals who used to search one another before going on robberies to make sure they didn't have lethal weapons. That is so that they wouldn't incur the death penalty. That is true. The notion it would have deterred Lucy Letby, I think, is a very strange one to argue, although you weren't directly maintaining that. We've come a long way from talking about Lucy Letby here. The traffic thing, honestly, to my mind, couldn't be more irrelevant. It wasn't not the purpose of our transport system for a moment to kill people. And only because you've mentioned it, Michelle, these things don't normally get talked about on television, but you're in the unlikely or unusual, I suppose, circumstance of having two Christians on a panel who couldn't reach more different perspectives. Vengeance is mine, saith the Lord, is my perspective. But moreover, I can't understand why we would say the state should be taking lives in these circumstances. To deter people, a whole life tariff will do that.
Well, there you go. I shall leave it to you guys to have the last thought on that at home. A death penalty, yes or no? I say yes, because I think that you should be punished, quite frankly. And why should we spend a small fortune leaving you and keeping you alive in prison? The flaw in my argument, though, sometimes when I come full circle in my own mind, surely it's not much of a punishment, is it? You just take a quick injection and you're off the hook. That's it. That's the end of your torment as a killer. Maybe if you do have to sit there in an awful condition for years and years to come, perhaps, obviously, I wouldn't condone this, but if cell doors was accidentally forgotten to be locked and all the rest of it, maybe that would be punishment more. You tell me. There was an intake of breath. I'll have to hold his breath because I'm going to go to a break. When I come back, I'll carry on with this story, though. I think I've just upset Peter with my last idea. I think it's a great one. Anyway, I want to ask you as well, should we be forcing these criminals to sit in the dock and hear their day of judgment or not? And also, what do we do about the failings in the NHS that, if you ask me, seem to keep happening? See you in 2.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Monday to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
Is the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hi there, Michelle Dewberry with you till 7, the columnist for The Mail on Sunday, Peter Hitchens, and the PR consultant Alex Dean alongside me. Someone who's asked to remain anonymous says, I am the mother of a NICU baby who died at 14 weeks old because of mistakes made by medical professionals. Our little boy should be 2.5 years old now, and we're in the middle of legal proceedings against the hospital. They say, oh, you've chilled me, I've got my goosebumps. You say, we will live with a life sentence because of what they did. We lost everything, and if you take a life, you should forfeit your life. Prison simply isn't enough. You've given me goosebumps, and I am so sorry. And you'll probably be familiar with the fact I too am a fellow NICU mum, so I really hear and understand what you're saying. George, I've got to say, George, you say, can I ask a question? Am I the only person who feels slightly sorry for Lucy Letby? You say, in your view, she's clearly mentally disturbed, as evidenced by her notes, and I certainly wouldn't support the death sentence in her case. Got to be honest, George, I think you might be in a minority of about one there. I don't think anyone feels sorry for this lady, but maybe I'm wrong. Get in touch with me if you do. And you say that she shouldn't face the death penalty because you feel sorry for her. I'm not really sure that that's how it would work. If you felt sorry for someone, you're all right, but if you don't, off they go. Anyway, before the break, and very briefly, Peter, I was saying that maybe punishment for Lucy Letby is you go to prison, and if cell doors have accidentally left unlocked, then, you know, what can you do? You had a massive sharp intake of breath. Why?
Well, I think it's barbaric to hand on to convicted prisoners the punishment of people who've been convicted by the justice system. We have a justice system, not a system for terrorising people. Do you know what prisoners do to other prisoners in prisons?
Well, I would hope it'd be pretty damn barbaric, quite frankly.
You would hope. But again, what if you were wrong? The reason we have a justice system is so that we don't have lynch law and mob rule and revenge. We have it precisely so that the justice system is stern enough and tough enough to prevent those things from developing.
Yeah, I've got to be honest, I don't really care what happens to you.
Well, I do.
You go around murdering kids and you get what you're given, quite frankly, if you ask me. Anyway, on that, we will agree to disagree. Now, Lucy Letby, she couldn't even be bothered to get herself up from the courtroom cell into the dock to hear the verdicts levelled at her. Many people are saying that she should be forced. I completely agree that, yeah, you should have been, quite frankly. But then the conversation, if you do think she should have been, how do you do that?
Well, quite. I mean, from time to time, I had clients who would refuse to come for their sentences. As it happened given my practice, they tended to be burly thugs who'd had histories of violence rather than people like this who'd murdered children. But in any case, it was clear that in the examples I'm thinking of, that the court staff were visibly relieved by the absence of my clients from the dock. Hard cases make bad law. And if you go around saying, right, we're going to equip people we're going to demand that they are compelled into the dock, the question is then, well, what are you going to do? You're going to, I saw it was supposedly an answer, you're going to handcuff them. All right, and when they fight and kick and scream and bite, you're going to strap them to a board, perhaps. And if you strap them to a board and now they're screaming their lungs out, whether it be I'm innocent or you're all liars or you did it or I'm glad I killed your children, are you then going to gag them? And who's going to put the gag on the mouth of the biting psychopath? You do have, I think, to spare a moment to think of the poor, low-paid people who you're asking to undertake this duty of compelling a violent person who's facing a whole life tariff and therefore has very little to lose from misbehaviour, from going into a compressed space.
I've it won't surprise you to think I've thought this through in depth. I've got an answer as to how I would do it, but before I get into that,
Peter, please say what it is. I mean, I'm inclined to think that Alex has a point. I mean,
you tell me your idea, because I'm sure you'll have a big intake of breath from you in mind.
I don't really have an idea. I think I had no idea until recently that it was possible for someone not to go into the dock for sentencing. It surprises me that it's something you can do. And the reason I imagine why there's no law saying that people should do it is that it's been assumed that they would. I personally think that everybody involved in trials should be in court at all times during the trial in which they're part. I dislike these video links and all kinds of other ways of having trials at arm's length, and it seems to me it would be better. But on the other hand, Alex's point about if somebody really doesn't want to come and is going to put up a fight, you've got a very big task, and it will look, I would say, quite bad for a justice system if people have to be hauled into court strapped to boards and gagged and chained up. It doesn't increase ultimately respect for the justice system, which you want to do. She's going to be facing the consequences. She is now facing the consequences of the verdict in her case in ways which are unimaginable to us. In any case, I think the whether or not she's in the dock at the time of sentencing is quite small compared with the things which she's now going to undergo. And if anybody feels they have that the justice system hasn't operated to their satisfaction, then they should use their imagination a bit as to what someone like that goes through in the hours and days after sentencing.
Well, what I would do. Are you sitting comfortably? Sure. I don't think you'll appreciate it as a legal professional. So first and foremost, I would change the construct of a dock, so it wouldn't just be this open space, it would be a contained unit.
Well, most of them are.
But like a proper contained
most of them are.
With two-way audio and visual. And what I would do is the person, if they were refusing, if there was like a violent psychopath or whatever, then they would have mild sedation. So you'd be mildly sedated in your cell, then you would be strapped to something. When you say what would it look like when it comes to the justice system, I think it'd look pretty damn good, actually. It'd look like tough justice, rough justice. You'd be brought to that sealed dock in whatever vessel it is, in your chair, whatever. No, there's more. There's more. So then you would have the audio piped into your little box, so you would hear the family's statements. You'd have your arms strapped down, so you've not got your fingers in your ear. You've got a two-way privacy glass. The judge has got the buttons. So if you start mouthing off and all the rest of it, the judge immediately silences your audio feed, so the people can't hear you. If you really can't control yourself because you just want to be ridiculous, then your privacy screen goes up, so you can, the people then, the victims cannot see you, but you can still see them, and you will hear what they have to say to you, and you will see the pain on their face, and they will be protected from you. That's what I would do. I would make that person go to bed that night and every other night listening to what they have done.
Minus the physical restraints, and we did away with the stocks some time ago, and minus the sedation, we tend not to send people into the docks high. There is a surprising amount...
Quite low, wouldn't it, if they were sedated? They'd be like semi-knocked out.
It depends on what dose you're going to give them, and then the state's taking on the liability of accidentally killing somebody, which takes us back to your point before, which you'd be in favour of, but I wouldn't be.
You have medical wars on prisons. You inject people all the time with stuff that they perhaps don't want to receive.
Well, you actually very rarely medicate, outside of a mental health order and declaring, sectioning somebody, you very rarely medicate somebody against their will. So it's a larger change to the law than I think you realise you're proposing. But the other measures you were talking about, there's more sympathy for that than you might think. Robert Buckland, the former Lord Chancellor, had a set of suggestions I thought were very sensible.
He did,
It's not into the dock itself. It's if you refuse to come up from your cell once you've been delivered to court, you pipe in the sentencing remarks into the cell, and there's no way of turning off that audio, and potentially with a video link too. So I agree with that, and I think that's sensible. That the thing I take such issue with, on purely practical terms, of course I want the person concerned to be in the dock, all things being equal. It's purely practical concerns about how you get them there and the exposure you're giving to people who are tasked with the responsibility of doing it. Let's just make one point.
Yep.
You talk about this because of Lucy Letby, and you wind up with big burly people. The killers of Lee Rigby they tried to compel them into the docks, and they started a fight with the court guards, right? Who are very often, retired policemen and so forth.
Yeah, you charge them in the prison cell. I've seen my programmes. You go in there, you've got your big shields, you ram them into the corner, you get your jab in, done. See you later. Next time you'll be opening your eyes, son, you're going to be in the dock.
You think that's a good advertisement for the British justice system?
I think it's a fantastic advertisement for the British justice system. And I think if they behaved a little bit more like that, people might be less inclined to go around committing the crimes that they do.
Then we have different conceptions of justice.
The whole point of the justice system is to be dispassionate. It is to take the person who's accused of the crime, to weigh the evidence against them, to find them guilty if they're guilty, to acquit them if they're not. If they're found guilty, it's then to punish them according to law by limited punishment, not limitless punishment, not to insult them or treat them barbarously, but to treat them as if we were civilized, even if they're not. We should not be sinking to the level of the people we're punishing, and we should be very careful about trying to appeal basically to the crowd. By adopting methods of this kind.
Well, you know what? What do you think to that? Should we be civilised when others are not? Perhaps you'll say absolutely yes. If you ask me if you torture kids, you murder kids, yeah, your human rights go out the window. Thank you very much.
Well, just imagine yourself wrongly accused in front of a court of the kind that you like.
Well, I hope I will never put
Of course you hope. Everybody hopes.
That's the point of being wrongly accused.
It happens to people.
That's the point of being wrongly accused.
Well,
wrongly accused.
What do you think at home? I'm going to throw the final word open to you. Give me your thoughts, and that's what I'm going to pick up on when we come back. Your thoughts in response to what you've just been hearing discussed.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Evening, Alex Deacon here with your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. A mixture of sun and showers for many tomorrow, a little cooler generally too, but in the south it will again be very warm in the sunshine thanks to this area of high pressure, but it's being pushed away by low pressure. This is becoming the dominant feature. It's making for a very wet evening across western Scotland, quite blustery as well. That rain will trickle southwards. A few showers this evening for Wales and northern England, one or two heavy ones, but they tend to fade, and then much of the south will have a dry night with clear spells, maybe some mist and fog patches. Pretty much everywhere it's going to be a mild night and a mild start to Tuesday, but quite windy across the north early on with cloud and outbreaks of rain across northern England, North Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland. The winds will steadily ease and the rain will break up to leave just a few showers really from late morning onwards. Not many of those showers though from the Midlands southwards, so most here staying dry and with the sunny spells coming through across southern England. Really quite warm again, 26, maybe 27 Celsius. Elsewhere temperatures closer to the low 20s and feeling fresher with that breeze. Although that wind will continue to ease, light winds again on Wednesday, so again maybe some mist and fog early on. A few more showers on Wednesday in the far northwest, the threat of one or two for West Wales and southwest England, but again many places will be dry on Wednesday with some sunny spells, feeling a bit warmer across northern England, and again in the south we could see 27 degrees.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Dewbs and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is two new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard. We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often they will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello there, Michelle Dewberry with you till 7 o'clock tonight. The columnist for the Mail on Sunday, Peter Hitchens, alongside me, as is the PR consultant and barrister. And I say that, I don't normally say that bit, Alex Dean, but tonight I do think it's very, very relevant, that part, because for the first part of the programme, at least, we've been discussing Lucy Letby, all the goings on there, whether or not the death penalty should be reintroduced, and also, as well, about, you know, can you force criminals, should you be able to force criminals to sit in the dock and hear their verdicts, their, you know, their day of reckoning, perhaps, and if so, how? Lots of you guys getting in touch. Carol is saying, I'm really enjoying your panel and the two gents tonight, loving your thoughts. Nicholas says, Michelle, you need to check where you have left your only brain cell. It is 2023. It is not 1523. Nicholas, I've left my brain cell in the land of common sense. I highly recommend it there. It's a fabulous place. I'll recommend it to you all. Let's have a look what's going on. George was saying about feeling slightly sorry for Lucy Letby. I think you're a little bit on your own there. As I said, you might be, but again, if you disagree, get in touch and let me know. We're talking about whether or not you could force somebody to face the day of reckoning. George says, I am a former prison officer and I've dealt with prisoners in cells who refuse to go to court. You say a judge can do this already, i.e. force them. You get a phone call from the prison to the courts stating that the prisoner has decided not to attend. If the judge then decides he wants that person to attend, a lawful order is given. If they refuse to then go, control and restraint force is used and the person is put in the van to go to court. Using force on prisoners as requested for this purpose is not a problem, he says, for staff to carry out. In this case, though, he would say that the judge is looking at the level of threat to this person from family, and most judges, he says, simply do not want the hassle. Michael says not appearing for sentence should affect any future appeal. The system must not win. Yes, but Michael, Lucy Letby, she's basically locked up. She's got a whole life order with no appeal, so she's gone. She's like got infinity.
She'll have an ability to appeal. I'm not
saying I thought she didn't.
She'll be able to appeal. I'm not saying she's going to succeed, but she can try to.
She can't get parole, but she can appeal against both sentence and verdict.
Of course, these things cut both ways, because on the other hand, whilst nobody's going to be suggesting that a whole life tariff is unduly lenient, she's got the highest sentence she could get. On the other hand, the Crown is entitled to have a second go on the counts that the jury didn't make a decision on. And if a jury can't decide normally, the prosecution will go a second time. So there are a number of other counts that she may face a retrial on, and there are also counts which she hasn't been charged with yet, allegedly. So we'll see about those too.
Sam says in America, murderers are brought to court with both hands and their feet shackled. Why are we so soft in this country? Peter Hitchens would say that we perhaps are better. We've got it the right way around when it comes to this situation as opposed to America. Pamela says, I completely agree with Peter Hitchens. Two wrongs do not make a right. Well, you speak about wrongs. Let's talk about the NHS. The management, right, in this case of Lucy Letby is pretty damn staggering. So many details coming out now, so many different concerns flagged to various different levels of management within the hospitals and the trust. Very little action taken. People saying, let's involve the police. No, we don't want to involve the police. You don't want blue tape all over your unit and so on and so forth. Lucy Letby left in post for a very long time when perhaps she shouldn't have been. What's going to happen? There's lots of talk about an inquiry and what form that would take. Criminal prosecutions, though, for the people that did wrong in the NHS, possible or not?
First of all, for your caller or your emailer, I must say I think Peter thinks that two wrongs do make a right, because of course he was pointing out that we bombed Serbia Serbia, and therefore the death penalty in this country was OK, using his logic, because the state, kills in option A, so the state should be able to kill in option B.
That wasn't what I said, or what I meant.
Well, it's certainly what you said.
May I then explain? You obviously misheard it. May I then make the point again? Which is that the liberal-minded persons were who claimed to be against the death penalty because innocent people might die as a result, supported the bombing of Serbia, in which innocent people inevitably,
but two wrongs don't make a right,
inevitably and predictably died.
Right.
My point was about their inconsistency, not about my consistency.
Right, and my point is about the NHS management. Come on, or else we'll be here all day.
Suggesting two wrongs make a right. In the NHS, plainly, there were many faults here, and I find it almost inconceivable that criminal prosecutions won't follow to more individuals than just this single person. And corporate negligence is a further step that I think is likely. One interesting wrinkle that's been underreported, in my view, so far, is the ability of NHS trusts to recall pensions, wholly or in part, for those who are adjudged to have drawn the work of the NHS and its activity properly into disrepute. Well, what more than killing babies on a pretty systemic basis might be suggested to be more bringing a healthcare system into disrepute. I find it difficult to envisage something, especially given that the whistleblowers concerned weren't just not heeded or listened to. At one point, they were forced to apologise to this nurse who's now been convicted of serial killing.
And in some cases, attend mediation.
Yes, so in my view, it's extremely likely that they will face some other system. But I just want to make one other point. I'm aware I've gone on a bit, so I just say it seems very likely to me this is going to wind up being a statutory inquiry. It seems very likely to me this is going to be a judge-led statutory inquiry, and the sooner the government comes around to that, I think the better.
Peter?
Well, I don't really know what to say. The National Health Service is subject to incessant inquiries, many of which come out with excoriating verdicts. And does not seem to me to improve as a result of any of this. So I'm not particularly keen on demanding more of them. I think we might draw the lesson that the NHS, as it's currently structured, is not perhaps the best way of organising a National Health Service free at the point of use, and we might think of different ways of doing it. But pursuing these things, particularly through the criminal courts or the police, seems to me to be a mistaken use of the law in any case.
Well, there you go. You let me know your thoughts on all of that at home. Ian wants me to be more sensible. He's saying that I am doing disservice to law and measured justice. He says I'm encouraging a mob mentality with my views. Am I? You get in touch and you tell me.
Actually, yes.
Peter thinks I am. Right.
I think you are too.
Oh, he thinks I am as well. Anyone else? Anyone else? I think I'm pretty damn sensible, quite frankly. Anyway, look, I've got a really interesting topic I wanted to come to you after the break. Why is it OK to constantly pick fire at white people? You tell me.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dewbs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. every Sunday from 11. Join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello there, Michelle Dewberry with you till 7 o'clock tonight. Alongside me still, Alex Dean and Peter Hitchens. We've been getting stuck into the topic of Lucy Letby, but I will move on in a second. Mike says, I agree with Peter Hitchens on everything, even he's saying about your transport policy killing people. He agrees with you on that.
Sensible fellow.
Danny says, what a clash of intellectual heavyweights tonight. He says the show has been absolutely fantastic. If I had £1 for all of you that's written in saying you completely disagree with me, then I'd be able to retire, I think, by the end of this programme. Where is my mum? Everyone's saying that they disagree with me. Mother, if you're watching, email in and say you agree with me, please. Thank you. Anyway, let's move on, shall we? Because I'll tell you something that really annoyed me this weekend. It might have annoyed you too if you saw it. The Lionesses, of course, good on you. Brilliant game. Unfortunately, we didn't win. What's not to love, though? All these girls, they're at top of their game, smashing it out the park, role models to everyone. But people can't help but complain. Listen.
The only thing I would say about this picture here, what jumps out of you is that this doesn't sort of represent diverse Britain. It's all these blonde, blue-eyed girls, and, you know, I wish them well, but I do think we need to ask ourselves questions about why is it that we've got, it has a lack of diversity.
Oh, it really annoyed me, not least, by the way, because one of those girls on that picture, I'm sure she was mixed race if my eyes do not deceive me. Anyway, it got me thinking, right, I cannot imagine a scenario, because you also had Sadiq Khan's office there were under fire as well this weekend, because they had a picture of a white family, and under one of their style and brand guides, basically, they had a heading which says, does not represent a real London family. I do not believe, Alex Dean, that you would be able to say this about any other collection of societies. So I think if I can just bring a graphic up, I've got the Team GB, one of the relay teams. Can I get this graphic up? You've got, can I get this graphic? Yeah, there you go. So you've got 4 ladies there representing Team GB, very athletic ladies, all black. You would never be able to look at that picture and say, brilliant team, but they've all got brown hair and brown eyes. That doesn't really represent Britain. It's not a role model to my children. You'd never rightly be able to say, that. So why can you say it in this context?
Yeah, I thought that they were disappointing and quite bizarre comments about our football team, because I think people should be selected on merit. I look at the success of our athletes at the World Championships, and I'm really proud of our British athletes doing well, and the fact that they happen to be black, I couldn't care less about. I equally couldn't care less about the fact that our women's football team happen largely to be white. And it's very peculiar. People don't tend to look at the Japanese rugby team and say, you know, why are they all Japanese? And so I just think it's absolutely peculiar that people take this perspective. On the Mayor Khan thing, of course, it's on the one hand, you've got to be fair. Sadiq Khan didn't say that, right? It was someone in his office that said this and put it. You know, these are not real Londoners. But of course, on the other hand, after 2 terms, he's been in for some time. He has built a system in which that is that's the value, or that's the approach for which you are rewarded in your job.
Peter?
When I was in the 1960s, and I was on the left in the 1960s. And the best thing about the left in the 1960s was its absolute opposition to racial discrimination, or what we in those days called racialism. I was taking part in demonstrations and pickets against it and instances of it in 1968. And what we believed very strongly was what Martin Luther King had said, was that somebody should be judged not by the colour of his skin, but by the content of his character. And I've believed that ever since, and I thought it was a very sensible approach, that we should not care. And every time anybody raises how many white people this, how many black people this, I say, honestly, can we please stop referring even to the colour of people's skin? We know that it's not important. It's not what's important about them. What's important about is the content of their characters. And I'm sick of it. And the thing that happened in this country, actually in the early part of the 21st century, particularly after the Macpherson report, was that the left, which I no longer belong to now, began to take a different view. It started to actually begin to say that it didn't want the colour blindness which we had fought for in the 1960s. Specifically, in the Macpherson report on the Stephen Lawrence murder, specifically it calls for the end of colourblind policing. Now, I think, actually, myself, colourblind policing would be a very good thing. And colourblind everything else, too. I don't want people being, in any way, I don't want quotas of any kind. That's right. The whole business of bothering about the colour of people's skin is over and should be finished. It's from the childhood of our civilization, and it's time we stop doing it. It doesn't matter which way it goes. I'm sick of it.
30 seconds from you.
I'll tell you why that's right. We've spent decades telling people that it doesn't matter whether you're black or white, it doesn't matter whether you're born a boy or a girl. You can do, if you work hard enough and you have the right values, then you can achieve great things. And for the first time, we've decided to go back on those values and say, that's wrong. It does matter what colour your skin is. It does matter whether you've had privilege or not, and you can never escape it. You'll always be judged for it. It's not progress.
Well, just stop trying to divide us. That's what I say. And a lot of people that say that they're anti-racist, if you ask me, they're some of the biggest racists that actually go. My final thought on that is if you are a parent that teaches their children they can only achieve something if somebody else that looks like them has done the same, I think, quite frankly, you need to up your parenting skills, if you ask me. Anyway, look, time flies. People still outraged about everything that I said earlier on. Someone on Twitter, I've forgotten your name, you're saying that the intelligent among society disagree with the death penalty. Those that agree with it are lacking intellect. I say you're a snob, an educational snob.
I would urge them all to read my article, Q&A on the death penalty.
Read his article. Peter, Alex, that's all I've got time for. God only knows where Nigel Farage is, but hopefully he's in his chair and ready to go. See you tomorrow.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Evening, Alex Deacon here with your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. A mixture of sun and showers for many tomorrow, a little cooler generally too, but in the south it will again be very warm in the sunshine thanks to this area of high pressure, but it's being pushed away by low pressure. This is becoming the dominant feature. It's making for a very wet evening across western Scotland, quite blustery as well. That rain will trickle southwards. A few showers this evening for Wales and northern England, one or two heavy ones, but they tend to fade, and then much of the south will have a dry night with clear spells, maybe some mist and fog patches. Pretty much everywhere it's going to be a mild night and a mild start to Tuesday, but quite windy across the north early on with cloud and outbreaks of rain across northern England, North Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland. The winds will steadily ease and the rain will break up to leave just a few showers really from late morning onwards. Not many of those showers though from the Midlands southwards, so most here staying dry and with the sunny spells coming through across southern England. Really quite warm again, 26, maybe 27 Celsius. Elsewhere temperatures closer to the low 20s and feeling fresher with that breeze. Although that wind will continue to ease, light winds again on Wednesday, so again maybe some mist and fog early on. A few more showers on Wednesday in the far northwest, the threat of one or two for West Wales and southwest England, but again many places will be dry on Wednesday with some sunny spells, feeling a bit warmer across northern England, and again in the south we could see 27 degrees.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles.